Good evening, I'm Wolf Blitzer, and welcome to CNN Perspectives. 6 years ago, American troops were dispatched to Somalia, where civil unrest and drought were tearing the country apart. It was supposed to be a humanitarian mission to bring food and medicine to starving refugees, but the mission changed. On October 3rd, 1993, a group of elite American soldiers dropped from Black Hawk helicopters into the heart of Mogadishu. Their mission was to capture key Somali warlords, thereby crippling the opposition. But almost from the beginning, the mission went terribly wrong. Tonight's film offers a harrowing account of one of America's worst military disasters since Vietnam, the Battle of Mogadishu. It's based on the reporting of journalist Mark Bowden of the Philadelphia Inquirer and produced by KR Video. Black Hawk Down, a story of modern war, next on CNN Perspectives.
I don't know what the other guys were thinking, but I was kind of thinking, wow, you know, we're pretty much invincible.
Up until October 3rd and 4th, every mission we did went exactly the way it was supposed to go.
He walked up to me and he told me he had a really bad feeling about today, meaning October 3rd, and he tried to hand me his little packet to send off to his parents, and I said, no, keep it. I said, you know, I'm going to see you in about half an hour anyway. I said, nothing's going to happen, and that was the last time that I saw him.
I know when our helicopter came in, we immediately started taking fire from the ground.
And all of a sudden, they're already shooting at us.
And I was just shooting everything that moved. It didn't matter to me.
Yeah, I just started to yell, I'm hit, I'm hit.
It was one nasty gunfight.
Wow, I've actually killed a person.
His eyes were wide open and his mouth was open like he was screaming, but he had already died. He was already dead.
I felt so alive because I was literally that close to death.
What are we doing here? How have we mucked up so badly? How could this possibly have happened?
It's the closest thing to a national holiday in a country without a national government. On the Day of the Ranger, Somalia remembers America's bloodiest battle since the Vietnam War, when the world's greatest military power collided with one that was merely good enough. New World Order descended into chaos as the most ambitious humanitarian mission in modern history ended in bullets, missiles, and death. But if the morals seem to be no good deed goes unpunished, that isn't the story of how good intentions wrought deadly results in Somalia.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
We're able to ease their suffering. We must help them live. We must give them hope. America must act.
They came from the richest nations on earth to help one of the poorest. Somalia, an East African country of some 6 million, was being decimated by famine and civil war. 300,000 people, including a quarter of all children under the age of 5, were already dead, with another 1.5 million, roughly a quarter of the population, at risk. For as long as it took to feed the starving, might would make right.
We come to your country for one reason only: to enable the starving to be fed.
Throughout 1991 and 92, relief groups had tried to help, but where factional fighting hadn't stopped the flow of food, bandits had. Somalis were dying at an estimated rate of 1,000 per day as relief workers were murdered, cargo ships were shelled in port, and trucks were hijacked on the road.
I'm gonna get right down here, guys.
Under Bush's plan, the U.S. would provide the backbone of a multinational military force to secure supply lines and deliver food to the starving.
From my point of view, I felt very strongly that the United States should not become the godfather of Somalia.
Robert Oakley was one to know. U.S. ambassador to Somalia in the 1980s, he had learned firsthand the risks of attempting to solve other people's conflicts, first as a diplomat in Vietnam and later in Lebanon, where U.S. Marines encamped at Ground Zero in a 7-year-old civil war were killed by a truck bomber as they slept. In 1992, President Bush asked him to become special envoy to Somalia. Though pleased by Bush's call for action, the UN was lobbying for a more ambitious plan of nation building. To end starvation for the long term, the UN believed Somalia needed a stable government. Mogadishu's most powerful faction leader, Mohammed Farah Aidid, would have to abandon his goal of ruling Somalia himself and govern in a coalition with his rivals. The UN wanted the U.S. military to clamp down on Aidid and the other factions and force them to work together. But the Bush administration remained adamantly opposed. If the mission ended up paving the way for long-term change, fine. But Bush was a short-timer. It would be up to President Clinton to decide whether to go deeper.
To most people, gardening's a hobby, but to the professional grower, it's a serious business.
You can't be in this business and not love flowers. You know, we grow over 500 million flowers a year. We want big flowers. Color is what it's all about, and that's why we use Miracle-Gro. It's got the right balance, nutrition. You know, gardeners are always afraid that they're going to take this plant home and kill it. You know, growing plants is really easy. A dose of Miracle-Gro every so often, and I guarantee you, you're going to have nothing but great results.
Good morning. This is the Farm Report. Pork bellies, wheat, and soy futures.
Where am I? Waking up is hard, wherever you are.
Good morning, sir.
But coffee helps. And cereal, and fresh fruit. Ooh, that definitely helps. And before long,
He did it again! Unbelievable!
you're a human again. This town's not so bad. Complimentary breakfast and a great new frequency program. It's more than a room. It's comfort.
If you could accompany your data on this trip overseas, the experience would be alarming. Local carriers handing it to national carriers, over to cable carriers, till you don't know who has your data. Unless you send it through here, with the one and only company that owns the entire network, local, national, and international. So you know who has your data. On net from MCI Worldcom.
Tonight on CNN Newsstand, the Kosovo Liberation Army. They've been called terrorists and freedom fighters. Who are they? How did they come to power? And what's left for the KLA in Kosovo? Plus, 60 years ago, a group of European people fled Nazi persecution and sought refuge in America, only to be turned away.
Nobody listened to our plight and didn't open the door for us.
Trapped in the fight for freedom. CNN in Time, tonight, 10/9 Central on CNN.
Celebrate 10 personalities from the first 25 years of People magazine. The most provocative celebrities of a generation. Tuesday, Jim Henson. He was the visionary who revolutionized children's television forever. His playful characters made learning fun for kids the world over. Now step inside the wild and wonderful world of Jim Henson on the next People Profile. Tuesday, 10/9 Central on CNN.
We now return to CNN Perspectives.
D-Day in Normandy, it wasn't. 1,800 U.S. Marines and Navy SEALs stormed the beaches in Somalia and are confronted by legions of reporters and press photographers. If it seemed comical, the Marines weren't laughing.
Put that down, Jimmy! Put your hands on your head!
They knew that beneath the outward calm, Mogadishu could be deadly dangerous, a place where everyone, it seemed, had a gun. As they began daily patrols, Envoy Robert Oakley began daily meetings with clan leaders. Especially this Somali, General Mohammed Farah Aidid, who had originally opposed the intervention. An ambassador in the Bahre regime he helped overthrow, Aidid was a charismatic and mercurial leader of the clan that controlled South Mogadishu, a man whose unpredictability was of grave concern to the U.S. and UN.
We treated Aidid, as I say, as a man with a tremendous amount of power, for better or for worse, sort of like a vial of nitroglycerin. He could go off on you, so we didn't want him to explode, and we worked very, very hard to figure out his moods and to deal with him appropriately.
For Oakley, the key was communication.
And so we're working constantly with the Somalis to reduce suspicions and to make them understand we're there to help them, not to hurt them.
And the U.S. intervention did help. It was such a success that when Bush visited at Christmas time, he was received like the nation's savior.
The office of President of the United States.
Just weeks later, Bill Clinton was president. He had criticized Bush in the campaign for failing to work more closely with the UN in solving global conflicts. An expanded commitment to Somalia seems certain. Secretary of State Warren Christopher, National Security Advisor Tony Lake, and UN Ambassador Madeleine Albright, she's now Secretary of State, supported the passage of UN Resolution 814, expanding the mandate of UN involvement in Somalia.
Everyone's enthusiasm got the better of their common sense.
They were going for a longer-term, more lasting kind of solution.
Admiral Jonathan Howe had recently retired after 35 years of military service to become President Bush's Deputy National Security Advisor. When Clinton took over, and with the relief effort going well, the new president nominated Howe to administer the UN nation-building effort in Somalia. U.S. forces would later step aside that spring and be replaced by UN troops, with Howe effectively taking over Bob Oakley's job as head peacekeeper.
And after I got there, I realized how very large the odds were that we would be able to do the job that we were sent to do.
As the United Nations political effort evolved, it became more and more hostile toward Aidid because they were suspicious of Aidid. Aidid, therefore, became even more suspicious of the United Nations.
And I think he liked his situation like it was, not as the UN in a fair kind of representative recovery would have made it possible.
The transition of power was completed on May 4th as the U.S.-led force marched into history, replaced by a poorly equipped brigade of 4,000 Pakistanis.
In this case, the United States did not have any fighting troops in the UN force. We had what was called a quick reaction force. It was under U.S. command the whole way.
But the quick reaction force was soon drawn into conflict, blasting Aidid's weapons dumps. The escalation began after June 5th, when Somalis killed 25 Pakistani soldiers flying the UN flag. They had been inspecting a weapons depot, but the crowd accused them of trying to shut down Aidid's radio station next door. Some of the corpses were dismembered and flayed. The UN decided to go after Aidid.
Well, first of all, we got a very strong resolution from the Security Council on June 6th, which essentially said arrest the perpetrators, get rid of the illegal arms in Mogadishu, and stop the vitriolic propaganda that is coming out of the radio station, which happens to be Aidid's radio station. In addition, it asked for armor and other equipment to be provided, since clearly the UN faced a new and difficult situation.
Admiral Howe also pressed Washington for another kind of weapon, one that could arrest those responsible with minimum casualties on both sides. That special unit was the Army's Delta Force, the secret counterterrorism troops that grabbed Manuel Noriega in the 1989 invasion of Panama. Delta's 3 130-man squadrons are the best trained and fittest soldiers in the Army, specializing in getting into and out of dangerous places quickly. In the Gulf War, they had destroyed strategic targets hundreds of miles inside Iraq. Admiral Howe wanted them to snatch Aidid off the streets of Mogadishu to face charges in the ambush of the Pakistanis, essentially removing him from the political picture. But Joint Chiefs Chairman Colin Powell denied Howe's request for the Delta Force. Even though Delta commanders felt Aidid would be a fairly easy target, Powell did not want elite U.S. troops involved in an obscure country's civil war halfway around the world. But the U.S. was hardly absent. Throughout June, UN forces led by U.S. helicopters continued their attacks on weapons depots. Aidid's forces struck back, shooting U.S., Pakistani, French, and Italian troops and massacring Somali civilians working for the UN.
We cannot have a situation where one of these warlords, while everybody else is cooperating, decides that he can go out and slaughter 20 peacekeepers.
A military response seemed certain. Abdi Hassan Awali was Aidid's Minister of Internal Affairs. On July 12th, CIA operatives believed that more attacks were being planned at his office. If the intelligence was correct, an attack could wipe out many of the general's top lieutenants.
So the whole idea of this particular raid was to destroy, disrupt, at least for a time, the command and control mechanism that was causing these attacks against us.
The U.S., acting alone, launched a missile attack.
The first shell came from behind me, above the window. I saw it hit a group of people who were sitting on the floor. Then I passed out and recovered 25 minutes later. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was broken limbs, hands, amputated parts of the body. I got injuries like this one here. I am not deaf in this year.
Some people died instantly. Some were injured when the bombs made holes in the walls. Some people mistook them from the doorways and fell to the ground from the second floor.
The Red Cross says more than 70 people died in the attack. Admiral Howe puts the number closer to 20. Regardless, the building has been in ruins ever since. And on that July afternoon in 1993, so were the prospects of compromise. It was later learned that Aidid's leaders had actually convened not to plan more acts of war, but to consider other ways to resolve the confrontation.
The minute I heard about it, I said, this is a disaster. The result was that all these people, whether they'd been moderates or liberals or radicals before the meeting, all became radicals when it was over.
We're all ready to die for our country.
Wasn't the kind of nation building anybody had in mind. By that time, the nation building had essentially gone to the background, and the battle for Mogadishu had begun.
It was successful and unsuccessful. It was executed very well militarily. Politically, it was not very successful.
As the summer went on, and this sort of tit for tat, although we were killing a lot more Somalis than they were Americans, nevertheless, Americans were being killed, so the decision was made something bigger has to be done. So we'll send out Task Force Ranger.
After 4 more American soldiers were killed in Mogadishu in August by a remote-controlled mine, General Powell relented, recommending the dispatch of the elite Army Rangers, including Delta Force commandos.
The Rangers weren't there to feed. We had a totally different mission in mind when we went there.
Pretty clear cut, from my point of view, what we were there to do.
Sean Nelson and Dale Sizemore were among the 150 men of Bravo Company, the 75th Ranger Regiment out of Fort Benning. The Rangers, average age 19, had just finished training in the U.S. with the more experienced Delta Commandos, on average 10 years older. The Rangers had gotten into the act because Aidid now knew he was a marked man, and grabbing him or destroying his ability to make trouble would require more than the small Delta unit envisioned 2 months earlier. So the entire 130-man Delta Sea Squadron, along with the Rangers and an elite air unit called the Night Stalkers, had been airlifted to the base in Mogadishu. The mission, chopper into wherever Aidid was hiding, fast rope to the building, burst inside commando style, then hustle Aidid and his top lieutenants onto waiting trucks that had arrived on the scene. Quite different from what the Pentagon was telling the world, that the Rangers' role was limited, that Aidid would not be a specific target. The Rangers, of course, knew better.
There was even actually a book with photographs of that warlord and all of his top aides
Our strategy was much broader. It didn't depend on arresting Adid, but we all felt if we could, this would be the shortcut to a quick resolution of these tensions, and we can get on with what we came here to do.
Try to remember now where to look for a ginkgo biloba to help aid memory. Nature's Resource knows you should look for one with terpenes and flavone glycosides for memory help. And unlike some, Nature's Resource guarantees the potency and purity you need. Make your herbal resource Nature's Resource. Follow the knowledge.
For those of you who actually have a life outside of gardening, there's garden.com. With tons of plants, expert advice, and home delivery, we can help anyone have a great garden. Now you don't need a green thumb, just an index finger.
Politics.
And instead of voting their conscience, they got their finger in the wind.
International policy.
You know the way to undermine Castro? Let democracy in.
Abortion.
It is not for people to take the law in their own hands and say so.
Crossfire. The program that takes on the tough issues.
You think we can roll up the sidewalk? No. Welcome to the 21st century.
Join Robert Novak and Bill Press on Crossfire. Weeknights at 7:30 Eastern, only on CNN.
We now return to CNN Perspectives.
October 3rd, just after lunch, and Sergeant Dale Sizemore remembers the conversation he had with fellow Ranger Lorenzo Ruiz.
He walked up to me and he told me he had a really bad feeling about today, meaning October 3rd. I said, nothing's going to happen. And that was the last time that I saw him.
The target is a 3-story building in the heart of Aidid's neighborhood, across from the Olympic Hotel. Several of Aidid's top lieutenants are supposedly inside. 3:42 in the afternoon, Delta commandos who have choppered in take positions along the outside wall as someone from inside the target building steps out onto the roof to see what's going on. Moments later, the Blackhawks pass overhead, preparing to offload the Rangers.
As we were sliding down the rows, we could hear bullets snapping by, and I kind of thought then that was kind of weird, because before, for the other missions, we had been shot at, but it took a while for that to start up once the Somalis realized, oh yeah, they're over there.
Abdul Karim Gele owned the target house.
They came from everywhere. They were breaking the windows, the doors, and as soon as I heard the noise, I came out and realized that they were American soldiers. I tried to tell them, we are civilians, no militia or military meaning here, but they started shooting anyway.
You always expect someone's going to shoot at you or be in that room.
Call him Steve, an 8-year Delta Force veteran who insisted on being interviewed in silhouette. He was among the first troops into the target site.
At that point, I moved my team upstairs. We cleared a low roof, and then moved the team moving up the stairs and started clearing rooms up on the top floor.
2 blocks away, the convoy waits for word to move in after the commandos take their prisoners. The Rangers crouch for cover outside the target building, keeping Somalis at a distance. Up in the command helicopter, high above the convoy, a Delta commander keeps things moving. 40 seconds later, disaster. The Black Hawk, piloted by Cliff Wolcott, codenamed 61, gets hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, disabling the rear rotor.
There was a big explosion after an RPG hit it.
Then the helicopter real slowly started to rotate upside down.
It hit the tail, and the helicopter turned and immediately fell down.
I remember hearing this horrendous crashing noise. I knew I I had to get there at any cost. I just had to get to that helicopter and get those guys out of there.
What you need to do is move fast. Basically move like your hair's on fire from position to position.
Somalis ignite a tire as a signal. This is where the action is, as both Somalis and U.S. troops race for the crash site.
The ground forces are currently getting out and trying to secure their own position. Many survivors climbing out of the wreckage right now.
As we approached the alley and I looked to the right and saw the helicopter, I could see it upside down. I was looking at the tail, basically upside down, and it was, the nose looked like it was still impacted on a brick wall.
Soon the soldiers arrived, and when they did, we surrounded them.
They had helicopters, good training, good organization. But the minute we saw one of their helicopters came down, we became confident that we could defend ourselves.
You know, all this dust starts getting kicked up around our feet. And I started thinking to myself, what the hell, what's all this going on? And I thought, wait a minute, he's shooting at us. Oh, God. All of a sudden, you know, we saw this, this AK-47, and all three of us just unloaded on this guy. And it was really frightening for me, because it's not something that it's not something you do. You don't shoot people. Wow. I've actually killed a person.
And I remember hearing rounds hit the building behind me and kind of tear against the building and continue on past.
A street is a kill zone. It basically channelizes the enemy's bullets and funnels them down a one-way corridor.
And then all of a sudden my leg just seized up and I started falling backwards.
As attack choppers provide cover, Goodale is pulled to a nearby building where his buddies give him first aid, and he first shows the sense of humor that would make him legendary in the firefight.
Actually, as it turns out, I did get shot in the leg, but the first place I got, I felt the pain was in my left butt cheek. So I, of course, had to make some jokes about getting shot in the butt.
Goodale was the jokester in a 15-man unit assigned to this Black Hawk chopper, codenamed Super 64, piloted by Mike Durant. With Black Hawk 61 now crashed, Black Hawk 64, which had been orbiting over the desert after the Rangers roped in, joined smaller attack choppers called AH-6 Little Birds that are swooping down on attacking Somalis, their miniguns firing 6,000 rounds per minute. The Somalis fire back. Minutes later, during a gun run over the crash site, a Somali RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, slams into the Black Hawk 64's tail rotor.
As soon as we saw the aircraft coming down, we ran toward the crash site and cordoned it off.
Yusuf Dahir Moalim commanded a small group of ID'd militiamen.
People started to rise from all directions. They all knew that there were some survivors in the aircraft. Those survivors started shooting at people. So we told people to stay away from the place as far as possible.
Still have your pay stubs from your college job?
Why would they need that?
You never know.
What do you really need to get a home loan with a great rate? Just Countrywide branch managers with the power to say yes.
I could sure use those statements.
Still looking.
So getting a loan is easy and fast.
Just checking in again.
Peter, I think I have everything I need from you.
It's okay. I don't want to rush the loan committee.
I am the loan committee. Your loan is approved.
We never stop thinking about what you need, and that makes home buying easy. Really.
Michael, I say, Michael, would you like to hear a bird call?
Sure, Foghorn.
With MCI, a bird can call for just 5 cents a minute every Sunday and 10 cents a minute all week long. Now that, my friend, is a beautiful bird call.
The bird thinks he's a comedian.
Now stop stealing my material.
Call 1-800-Sundays to sign up.
Don't get me riled.
Tonight on CNN Newsstand, the Kosovo Liberation Army. They've been called terrorists and freedom fighters. Who are they? How did they come to power? And what's left for the KLA in Kosovo? Plus, 60 years ago, a group of European people fled Nazi persecution and sought refuge in America, only to be turned away.
Nobody listened to our plight and didn't open the door for us.
Trapped in the fight for freedom. CNN in Time, tonight, 10/9 Central on CNN. Tonight, a Massachusetts law is forcing homeless families to choose between a job or a roof over their heads. CNN in Time, tonight, 10/9 Central.
Property owners, if weeds and brush are taking over your land, at last there is a solution. The amazing DR Field and Brush Mower can reclaim overgrown parts of your property with less work than you ever dreamed possible. Now, if you've ever tried to clear an overgrown field or ditch with a handheld brush cutter or a shaky sickle bar mower, you know they're exhausting to use. Take hold of a DR Field and Brush Mower, though, and you've got a whole different story. The DR knocks over brush and saplings up to 1 inch thick and chops most everything it cuts, so there's no tangle of vegetation to trip over or to pick up. So why let weeds and brush take over? Call now for complete details about the amazing new DR Field and Brush Mower. Call toll-free 1-800-654-1500 for your big free package all about the amazing DR All-Terrain Field and Brush Mower. Special savings are now in effect, so call 1-800-654-1500 for free DR details.
Morning News, weekdays 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on CNN.
We now return to CNN Perspectives.
So now there are 2 battlefields. Up at Crash Site 1, Delta Steve and his team set up a line of fire.
So I would basically just shoot rounds real slow, accurate. About 2 blocks up, I would have people that would try and run across the street, darters, what I call them. And they would be sprinting across the street with weapons, and I would shoot at them. A lot of times you don't know if you hit them or not because they'll run out of view, and if you hit them, they'll probably die somewhere out of view, but you don't get that. It's not like in the movies that people just drop.
Ground transportation. The commander wants Humvees, Jeeps, and 5-ton trucks to move out from base and head for Crash Site number 2. Meanwhile, the convoy of vehicles from the target site still hasn't gotten to Crash Site number 1. Even with aerial guidance, the narrow streets are just too confusing. The situation's getting worse, and the commander needs those reinforcements fast. Back at base, Dale Sizemore heeds the call. He'd been ordered to stay behind because his arm was in a cast, but now jumps aboard a convoy of Humvees headed for Crash Site number 2. They are pounded by enemy fire.
It was war, us against them, our survival against theirs. And if it was up to us, then it was going to be ours.
At this traffic circle, they run into the convoy that's given up trying to get to Crash Site number 1 and begin battling their way back to base. Sizemore's friend, Casey Joyce, is one of the casualties.
His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was open like he was screaming, but he had already died.
A medic then ushers Sizemore over behind a MASH tent.
He pulled the tarp back, and he asked me, he said, is that Kowalewski? And I looked down, and I couldn't say anything because he had been shot with an RPG, and it went in one side, and it just stopped right here where the head of the RPG was sticking out this side of his chest, and the fins were sticking out on this side. It looked like Kowalewski, but I couldn't believe that that was him, laying there.
Sizemore notices that the corpse has no left hand. It later turns up in the pocket of a soldier with the almost unbelievable name Aaron Hand, who had been shot in the leg.
When he was laying on the ground, he saw Kalushki's hand and picked it up and put it in his pocket. And so the Somalis wouldn't get it, which is an amazing thing to think about. And just that kind of mentality is what the range is all about. Not leaving, your friends behind. And that was part of one of his friends, so he took it with him.
Back at crash site number 2, where they are shielded by the wreckage, pilot Mike Durant, his leg broken in the crash, and 3 others fight off hundreds of Somalis firing at them from behind walls and trees. For more than an hour, their machine guns keep attackers at bay.
He and his men fought bravely. They were told to surrender. They refused.
2 of those men are Delta Commandos Randy Shugart and Gary Gordon.
You don't surrender, you don't give up. If you look at Randy and Gordy, they didn't do that, either one of those. They fought to the end.
For them, the end comes after a deafening 2-minute barrage of fire directed at the chopper. In the silence that follows, Durant knows that the other Americans are dead. Out of bullets, he lays down his weapon, folds his hands across his chest, and waits for death at the hands of an onrushing mob of furious Somalis. Yusuf Moalim finds Durant leaning against this tree. Recognizing that Durant is more valuable alive than dead, he struggles to remove Durant while the crowd and its wrath is diverted.
There were some dead Americans at the crash site, bodies. So instead of running toward Michael Durant, people rushed into the aircraft itself, and this deferred most of the angry mob.
The killing happened for one reason, to defend our dignity and national interest. We don't kill captured soldiers, but the ones get killed in a battle. Nothing good comes out of them, which is why they were dragged through the street. They brought that upon themselves.
Before October 3rd, the people in that neighborhood were subjected to severe punishment from the American forces. Their houses were destroyed by helicopters, their property was completely destroyed by helicopters, and on this day, those angry men and women were trying to destroy whatever they saw of the Americans. Some Americans were killed and their bodies dragged through the town, and that was very unfortunate.
While crowds begin to mill around the wreckage, Moalim and his friends carry Durant from the crash site to deliver him to ID'd clan leaders. Half a mile away, the battle still rages.
That night seemed to literally be a week long.
It seemed like a month.
Like many Somalis we interviewed, Ahmed Jama fears an American reprisal and did not want his face shown.
I have never seen a battle like that, not even all the Somalian wars that I have been through.
And I remember it seemed like several hours where the Little Bird pilots, the AH-6 pilots, were making just gun run after gun run after gun run. And it literally seemed to be raining spent machine gun cartridges and machine gun links down on our position.
About 3 RPGs on that corner behind us. You take it in tight or lay back about halfway, maybe you'll pick a sucker out and we'll bust him.
They'd bring in the people on trucks, and they'd have certain intersections where they'd get their people organized, so to speak, like assembly areas, if we can call them that. And they would mass them on intersections to prepare to come down and to attack us. Well, they just start to come down, and a helicopter would come in and just rake them with machine gun fire and kill probably 20, 30, 40 people at a time. They basically put them in a meat grinder, and we kept turning the handle.
I said, hey, when is this relief convoy supposed to get here? He said, oh, they'll be here at 8 o'clock. I said, okay, no problem, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock rolls by and nobody. And then maybe 8:30, and finally I said, hey, what? Are they getting here? Yeah, they're having some trouble rounding up some more vehicles.
The U.S. force came to the UN, who had tanks by now. A few Pakistani tanks had some. The Malaysians had vehicles. The Pakistanis had vehicles, and asked those forces to join in and to participate in the recovery effort, which they did. Clearly, this hadn't been rehearsed and practiced, and with language difficulties and all kinds of problems. And it took a little while to get this well organized so that going into a very dangerous area in the middle of the night would not turn out to be another disaster on the top of the first one.
There's a Somali saying, if you corner a cat, it will kill you. So when they corner us, we had to defend ourselves and fight against them.
Finally, at 11 o'clock, soldiers like Phil Lepre begin moving from base in the rescue convoy.
All I hear is bullets bouncing off the tank. Boom, 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 boom. Explosions all over the place. I'm like, where the hell am I going into? After I said a little prayer, took off my helmet, looked at my daughter's picture. I said, babe, I hope you have a wonderful life.
3 hours later, at 2 a.m., they reach the crash sites and the 3-block area where soldiers like Delta Steve and Mike Goodale are holed up. Goodale is promptly loaded into an armored personnel carrier, but the convoy does not leave because pilot Wolcott's body had not been extricated from the wreckage.
We weren't going to leave no one behind. If it would have taken 12 hours to get his body out, we would have got his body out that night. Because it's just like a creed. It's unwritten law that we will get your body out and we will bring you home.
With the body finally recovered, the survivors get a rude shock.
They told us that basically we had to walk out on foot, that there was no room inside the vehicles. And again, I thought, this is going to be fun. And we've survived, you know, I don't know what, 10, 12 hours of firefight. And now we're going to have to walk out and fight our way out on foot. Well, all these other folks ride. I said, well, not much more they can do to us here.
I don't think I've ever run any faster in my life.
It was a bullet-riddled mad dash up to the Pakistani sector that the troops would later call the Mogadishu Mile.
Every nook and cranny, every window and every doorway and building, home and hotel or structure we ran by, we took fire from or were returning fire on combatants.
Incredibly, only one soldier is injured, and notably, there were no roadblocks. Aidid's Minister of Defense says that was deliberate.
This decision was taken to leave them alone. Otherwise, that was enough, we thought, to show them that we can fight.
At 6:30, the convoy reaches the safety of the Pakistani-controlled stadium, where morning sun reveals the horror.
Then it kind of started sinking in that, wow, you know, a lot of people are hurt, a lot of people are dead.
I felt so alive because I was literally that close to death.
I looked back to the side of the Jeep where I was mostly sitting all night, and it was just, it looked like Swiss cheese. It was amazing, you know, to think that I never got shot.
18 Americans died in the firefight. Somalis, estimates run well over 1,000 wounded and 500 dead, many of them women and children.
The men were hiding behind women and shooting underneath their arms. And it got to the point where you just have to shoot the woman and then shoot the man behind her. And it is, you know, bad deal for her, but she was helping him, so in actuality, it was her own fault. And I felt no remorse about any of it.
Kids would carry rocket-propelled grenades, so it was a family affair. It's not like they were innocent civilians. We did what we needed to do to keep people away from our crash sites. If you're coming to a gunfight, you're wrong. There's only one reason to come to where people are shooting, and that's to fight. People don't come there to dance, so we treat them accordingly.
I just put it out of my mind that they were even people, and just knew what I had to do, and just kind of pictured them as targets that were trying to hurt me.
I know, I guess it's unethical to shoot women and children, but is it unethical when they're trying to kill you?
Enough's enough. We've done our part. We've fed the starving masses. We've stopped starvation and saved thousands of lives. It's time to bring our troops home.
But simply pulling up and leaving would not be so simple.
I'm a soldier. I have to do what I'm told.
After Mike Durant was captured by Moalim and delivered to Fermi, he was kidnapped by bandits who demanded a ransom from Aidid for Durant's return. They got their money, but not before making this video.
Not a ranger. No.
returned to the relative safety of the Aidid clan, he was guarded by Fermi.
The first night I met him, I was very angry, but I respected him out of our religion, our dignity. And later on, before he left, he became a sort of brother for me. He even requested a Bible, and we got that for him.
Jonathan Howe saw an opportunity in the aftermath.
This was a devastating blow to the Aidid community. And in fact, the word that we got very shortly afterwards from that faction was, we've paid any debts we had to Aidid. We want peace. We're through with this. This has gone too far.
Robert Oakley, still on the sidelines, was overcome when he heard about the firefight on the radio.
And the feeling of what are we doing here? How have we mucked up so badly? How could this possibly have happened?
Oakley was asked to come to the White House by National Security Advisor Tony Lake and attend a strategy session with the president and his top advisors.
And at the end of it, we came up with what I thought was a sensible approach, which was to gradually pull the Americans out, because it's quite clear to me that public and political opinion would not stand for our lingering in Somalia any more than they had for our lingering in Beirut after the Marine barracks was blown up.
Innocent people being killed is not good.
With marching orders to recover Durant, Oakley packed his bags for Mogadishu, where after 5 days, Ethiopian diplomats were able to arrange a meeting with Aidid staffers. And consistent with the seemingly schizoid nature of all dealings with Aidid, the message of conciliation that had been sent to Admiral Howe was very different when Oakley demanded Durant's immediate release, no strings attached.
They said, but we Somalis never do that. It's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We can't do that. Look at all the blood that's been shed. Look at all the people that you're still holding. And I said, well, you've got to. And I said, let me be honest. If you don't, this is not a threat, but if you don't, I'll tell you what I think will happen. After some weeks, the United States will be very, very frustrated. You'll be asking for things. This will be seen as a hostage situation. And we'll say we won't give in to hostages. And you'll say, but we have to have a price. By the time the shooting is over, given the tanks and the aircraft carrier with aircraft and the gunships and everything else that's going to be here, there won't be anything left in South Mogadishu. There'll be cats, dogs, goats, people, women, children, you name it, everything is going to be gone, because the amount of firepower is so great and the amount of hatred and anger behind it is so great. So don't create this sort of a situation, I beg of you.
24 hours after Robert Oakley's ultimatum, and against the advice of many in his clan, Aidid released Durant. The search for Aidid was over, and American troops would soon begin coming home. Admiral Howe, virtually shut out of the decision-making, felt the Clinton administration's sudden turnabout was a big mistake.
You know, we were at a point where that battle and the sacrifice made there perhaps could have been the catalyst that led to a solution.
Attempts to talk Aidid into an agreement resumed, but Howe's successors at the UN got predictable results.
They would get very close. They think, gee, we're going to get another agreement, we're going to be able to sign, and then at the last minute, the deed would pull out.
Some folks think they'll never be a good gardener. Well, that's nonsense. All they need is confidence and a little Miracle Grow.
When I first started gardening, a dear old friend of mine said, listen, if you're going to garden, take this. It's magic. Feed them a little Miracle Grow and get good, long-lasting, colorful blooms. Great leaves, strong roots. Check it out. Miracle Grow will keep your flowers blooming all summer long. Miracle Grow. It's a little bit of magic.
Now give your new transplants a fast start with Miracle Grow Quick Start.
Good morning. This is the Farm Report. Pork bellies, wheat, and soy futures.
Where am I? Waking up is hard, wherever you are.
Good morning, sir.
But coffee helps. And cereal and fresh fruit. Ooh, that definitely helps. Before long,
He did it again! Unbelievable!
you're a human again. This town's not so bad. Complimentary breakfast and a great new frequency program. It's more than a room. It's comfort.
Only CNN, the world's news leader, offers a full hour of hard news at 6:30. The Moneyline News Hour with Lou Dobbs. Thoughtful, insightful, and complete. Intelligent coverage of the day's events, plus all the financial news from around the world you've come to rely on. All the news from the best in the business. The Moneyline News Hour with Lou Dobbs. Weeknights, 6:30 Eastern on CNN and CNN FM.
Weekdays.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talk Back Live.
It's provocative.
You didn't answer her question. Give us the straight talk.
A place for great debate.
You know, we're having an intellectual discussion. We don't have to always agree.
A news program where your voice can finally be heard.
I think people are tired of all the rhetoric. They just want to see some action taken.
Now, join Bobby Batista, your live connection by computer, phone, or fax to top newsmakers in the world's first daily interactive town hall meeting. Talk Back Live. Weekdays, 3 Eastern on CNN.
There are a lot of TV news magazines covering lots of stories, but when you want the big stories first, turn to CNN and Time. First on TV, reveal how a secret UN operation halted missile parts headed for Iraq. We caught them red-handed. First to report why women are murdered for disgracing their families.
No solution, no way but to kill them.
First to uncover how big city cops lower the crime rate by not reporting crimes.
It's a violation of public trust.
CNN and Time, bringing the big stories first to TV news magazines on CNN.
Tuesday on the next People Profiles, Jim Henson. He was the visionary who revolutionized children's television forever. Now step inside his wild and wonderful world. Next People Profiles, Tuesday, 10/9 Central on CNN.
We now return to CNN Perspectives.
We went in someone's backyard and tried to tell them what to do and how to do things. And they basically, if we didn't have the firepower and the training we had, you know, they would have kicked our butts at night.
But yeah, I think everybody that was there, we wanted to get into it a little bit, but we didn't necessarily want exactly what came out of it.
I think we should have stayed committed and continued the mission and completed the mission instead of withdrawing the way we did.
This is the warrior mentality, and once you get into a war, you want to win. And if you have your people killed, you want to win even more, and you want to kill even more of the enemy. Well, in this case, we killed, I don't know, 1,000, maybe more Somalis that one day, the 3rd and 4th of October. And all in all, we killed 5,000 or 6,000 Somalis. And so far as I was concerned, this had been the wrong course to take.
We tried to work on the margins. And if you're going to be been there and you're going to be involved, you need to provide the muscle and the resources and the people to make something that you undertake successfully.
There's 18 American soldiers over there that died. For what?
Most Somali people, and I think this is one of the misunderstood things about the whole U.S. and UN effort, really appreciated what the U.S. and the United Nations and the countries that went in with us did for them.
Give them the food and let them deal with it. Don't put my friends at stake or me at stake. We've got plenty of starving people in the United States, you know, that won't shoot at us when we're trying to do it. I wouldn't trade one American life for 10,000 Somalis. It just wasn't worth it at all.
You can't bully the Somali people. Use force to try to make things the way you want them. Somalis learn that they can govern themselves and they don't need anybody from the outside to lead them or give them systems.
There's not a day that goes by I don't think it's Somalia.
Somalia still has no national government, and the clans continue their civil wars. The northern part of the country is recovering, but then it never saw the kind of strife that tore Mogadishu apart. Washington's quest for blame led to Defense Secretary Les Aspin, who resigned in December 1993 amid second-guessing of his decision not to send heavy equipment like the AC-130 gunship to Somalia. He died of a stroke in 1995. Mohammed Farah Aidid died of a reported heart attack in August 1996 after being shot in Mogadishu. Army General William Garrison, who commanded Task Force Ranger, retired the very same day. Sources say he winks at the coincidence. 1 week after the Battle of Mogadishu, Bill Clinton ordered Navy ships to turn back from a peacekeeping mission in Haiti when an anti-American mob assembled on the docks of Port-au-Prince. And although U.S. forces would later keep the peace in Bosnia, they would be part of a NATO force numbering 60,000. Troops that were not deployed until after the warring factions had committed themselves to the Dayton Peace Accords. President Clinton was re-elected in a landslide 10 months later.
With 18 American soldiers dead, American public opinion of the Somali mission changed overnight. Now, 6 years later, Yugoslavia and the threat of casualties reawaken the debate on American intervention in conflicts far from home. Thanks for joining us on CNN Perspectives. I'm Wolf Blitzer.